stakeholder in the community. He was previously an officer on the Charlottesville Police Department, and he is now in the private sector. He has a master's in business from the University of Virginia, and he is a man that understands the plight of the Charlottesville Police Department as someone who worked within the Charlottesville Police Department. I've tried to highlight, I've said oftentimes on this program, I'm not afraid to have conversations that matter and conversations of merit on this show. And it may not be the most popular approach in this town, but it's an approach that I genuinely care about and I genuinely sympathize with. I often champion police officers in Central Virginia, certainly in Albemarle County, certainly in the city of Charlottesville, and across Central Virginia and the Shenandoah Valley. And we will continue to do that, despite some of the commentary that I've received from doing it. And I find it unfortunate that such a large percentage, this was as of March 18th, there was 117 police officers, total sworn positions, total positions in the CPD. 28 of those 117 positions were vacant, 89 positions were filled, a 24% vacancy rate. And of those 89 filled positions, only 8 officers are living in the city they serve. So we'll talk about the police department today on the program with someone who knows the department quite well, and that's Alex Bruner. Give the show a like and a share anywhere you are watching. The dynamic element of this program is you, the viewer and listener, can offer perspective, questions, and commentary on the show. I don't mind being challenged on this program, and we're often challenged on the show, but it's got to happen in respectful fashion. We will only relay on the show perspective that is respectful. Judah Wickhauer is our director. We can start this program, sir, when you are ready. I see folks from the TV station, one of our print outlets watching the program here. Scott Aaronworth, the attorney in Virginia Beach, hello. Welcome to the program. This is one of our local radio stations on the heat map as we speak. We're in your hands, Judah. We can start when you're ready. Guys, welcome to the I Love Seville show. My name is Jerry Miller. Thank you kindly for joining us. Good Monday afternoon to you. Guys, we're live in Charlottesville, across Albemarle County, Central Virginia, the Commonwealth, the country, and the world on the I Love Seville network. And it's great to connect with you guys through this platform. We envisioned a platform almost 6 years ago where the network would connect with you, the viewer and listener, throughout social media channels everywhere. And we've created that. We bring conversation to you that is real and tangible and palpable and unafraid to penetrate topics that matter to the community. And this topic matters quite a bit to me. The Charlottesville Police Department is severely understaffed. There are 117 total positions within the Charlottesville Police Department. This was as of March 18th. 89 of those positions were filled. That's 28 vacancies and a vacancy rate of 24%, a startling and alarming number. Furthermore, of the positions that are filled, 89, only 8 of those positions have officers living within city limits, the city they serve. I will give that to you again. 8 of the 89 positions, officers living in city limits, 5 renting and 3 homeowners. A lot to unpack there, and we'll start doing some of that unpacking with Alex Bruner. Judah Wickhauer is our director. If we can go to the 2-shot and welcome Alex to the show. This gentleman, formerly of the Charlottesville Police Department, now in the private sector, a board of director with the Charlottesville Police Foundation. Good afternoon, Alex. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. Before we talk shop, introduce yourself, please, to everybody that's watching today's program.
Absolutely. My name's Alex Bruner. I am a lifelong resident of Charlottesville. I was born and raised here. Went away to school, went away to college, but came back just after and joined the Charlottesville Police Department. And after about 5 years service with the police department, got an MBA from Darden at the University of Virginia, and am now living and loving life here in Charlottesville, raising a family with my wife in the North Downtown area.
Fantastic. Charlottesville Police Officer, 2010 to 2015.
That's right.
Why'd you join the police force?
So I joined the police department in 2010 after some great experiences with public safety in college. I was a volunteer EMT and firefighter. I ran our collegiate volunteer emergency medical service at Lehigh University, and so enjoyed that experience, the purpose behind it, the sense of purpose, and also had some great interactions with the police officers in that time. So graduating college, looking for work, it called to me, the notion of sort of one more round of service in public safety, and it just made sense to me. I'd done firefighting and emergency medicine, and so let me try police work.
5 years on the force as an officer. What was that experience like?
Absolutely life-changing. I'm very, very glad that I did it. Especially growing up in the town or serving the town that I grew up in, rather, saw a different side to the community, worked with a fantastic group of people. My midnight shift crew, especially, very fond of them. Still keep in touch with a lot of the officers that I worked with. Really inspired by everybody that I met in it for what I consider the right reasons. Really in it to help the community, I carry that today.
5 years doing this. You know what it's like to be on the beat. You know what it's like to work an overnight shift. You know what it's like to put the proverbial life on the line. Certainly a profession that, from my standpoint, is heroic. When I go to work, I don't risk, at least I hope I don't risk, my life when I walk into a studio and talk about the community that I love, but police officers certainly do that. Today, the Charlottesville Police Department, like police departments across the country, facing a level of attention perhaps like never been seen before. A level of antagonistic attention, if you may. Why do you think we're at that point in our culture of antagonistic attention to a profession that, for as long as I've known, has been one of heroism?
Yeah. That's a very complicated, multi-leveled issue, I think. Certainly in the last, I'd say starting in about 2015, I remember, I was actually traveling to New York to be on the Today Show to talk about policing issues with a panel, and taking the train through Baltimore during the Freddie Gray riots. So I think a lot of the concern comes from, the point of community concern. It's people want their police officers to be just, want them to use the correct amount of force for the given situation. So I think, that a lot of these people are asking the right questions. My great fear is that in the manner that some of the questions are asked and the issues raised, it just ends up putting up a wall instead of shaking hands across the community to come up with a positive solution.
The attrition within CPD worries me. I know it worries you. First, let's talk about the role of the foundation. What is it that the Charlottesville Police Foundation, what's the mission? What do you guys do?
So the Charlottesville Police Foundation, nonprofit, we do not respond to, or we are not overseen by the police department, nor does the police department take orders from us. Independent nonprofit organization. We believe that the city of Charlottesville is going to be better off, best served by the best police department that we can have. So our mission is to support especially frontline officers in being able to do the best job that they can do in serving the community.
Would you characterize, or how do you characterize the department today? We mentioned the vacancy rate of 24%, the unfortunate nature of only 8 of 89 officers living in the community they serve. We understand that police officers, much like teachers and nurses and frontline workers, EMTs and firefighters, are tremendously underpaid. We understand that jurisdictions around the city are offering higher pay structures than the CPD, and then are pretty much explaining, or it's frankly very obvious, that there's no commute necessary. You can serve in one of the jurisdictions around Charlottesville and work in the county or the community that you're serving in, and not worrying about having to drive 25, 35, 45 minutes to a neighboring jurisdiction in a car that you're probably paying for gas yourself,
yep.
Which is adding to costs from a quality of life standpoint. So I'm going to open-ended question for you here. 24% vacancy rate worries me. Morale worries me. And jurisdictional competition worries me.
Yep. So you touched on a lot of really important things there. Right off the bat, that vacancy rate, that's the number of sworn officers that we have on officially on the books. And that includes from at any given time maybe a half a dozen officers who are in training, who ride 2 per car with a training officer. So they're not really additional boots on the ground, as it were, and doesn't account for officers who may be out sick. I heard at one point during the pandemic they were down a little over 20 officers out sick, and so I'd ask all the people watching, do you feel adequately policed? Do you feel safe in the community with fewer than 70 officers actually available to respond to crimes in a city of 45,000, I think we're up to about now. So that's one big issue. On the housing issue and the pay and the tenure, I think all come together, right? How much turnover do we have? Where do the officers live, and what are they paid? All comes together and really impacts as well. The quality and the type of policing that we have, right? If you have officers turning over every few years, it's incredibly difficult to establish good community policing relationships. And that's something that I hear the call for all the time. And so we need officers to stick around. We need them to stick around as well just for that experience. I remember asking an officer when I first joined how long it took until he felt comfortable responding to any type of call he might be sent to, and he said it was about 3 years. And in my 5 years experience, I felt that to be pretty true too. It was about 3 years after being hired before I felt actually comfortable going to calls. So we need those officers there in the middle with 5, 10, 15 years experience, and they're the ones at great flight risk, because you can go to UPD right now. I think they're offering
University Police Department.
The University Police Department. They don't even have to move very far, and they get a significant pay bump and a signing bonus for coming on as a certified officer, as a certified sworn officer. And several other jurisdictions in the area are doing the same. So we're losing officers to pay. The housing issue is long running. When I was with the department from 2010 to 15, I believe I was one of only 6 officers at the time who was living in the city. And there again, we would love to see more officers be able to afford and want to live in the city. Plant roots here, right? Be stakeholders both on and off the job in the community. To that end, the foundation has a housing grant program. We offer a $20,000 grant to an officer if they buy a home in the city or within a very short distance outside the city. And that's conditional on them staying in that house for a few years. And that's to help, but even so, with the housing prices we've all seen in the last couple of years, that's become increasingly difficult.
So when you were on the, when you were a part of the Charlottesville Police Department, when you were an officer, that was Chief Tim Longo.
That's right.
Chief Tim Longo, A-plus people in my book. No one throws up more weight in the gym than Tim Longo. I see this guy getting after it at ACAC still to this day, and he is a beast in the gym. Now the police chief with the university police department. From Police Chief Longo, we then had for a New York minute, Chief Thomas. A little bit longer than that, we had Chief Brackney. Now we have Tito, a great guy, as the interim police chief. What happened from an icon and institutional memory of Chief Longo to Chief Thomas, Chief Brackney, and now an open position that I believe is the second or third top paying job in the city of Charlottesville. City manager's one. I think police chief is either 2 or 3. So this is one of the best places to live, as you and I both know, in America.
Yep.
And we've got some attrition atop the department with the chief job that you would think, certainly with, flirting with 200K, with benefits and everything, would be a waiting list of qualified candidates.
Yep.
Your thoughts on that?
So I feel privileged to have served under Tim Longo, and I don't mind if he knows that. Really inspirational guy, and I think first and foremost, he regularly came to roll calls. This is what we do at the start of every shift: get the shift in one room, talk about pressing issues, check equipment, and hit the streets. He would regularly come to roll calls and talk about the importance of social capital, right? The police department is not in the business of making money, right? Despite what some people who get ticketed feel, they're not out there to make money for the city. So how do you evaluate, what you're doing out there? Well, one measure is social capital, and that's essentially saying we've built up goodwill in the city so that if and when something happens, some critical incident, some questionable response, that the community trusts that the department is going to handle it. And he just had this laser focus on social capital. And I think that paid off. We had a few incidents in the time that I was serving, and man, there was no community backlash, no marches, protests through the streets, flip cars, graffiti, nothing. And I think it's because the community trusted us. In the time since then, I don't want to comment on any individual leaders, but I think the revolving door, number one, shows that we haven't really had the right people for Charlottesville and for the department, and number two, just on the ground level, has a very serious impact on patrol officers out on the front lines. If you don't know how long your chief's going to be around and who the next chief is, then how confident can I be going out and being proactive in policing, right? Not just being responsive, but being proactive. How certain am I of my job in a couple of years? Why should I move to Charlottesville and buy an expensive house if the department's going to be turned upside down and I don't know if I'm going to even have a job here anymore? So, some stability, I think, throughout city leadership would be fantastic and a great benefit to the department too.
It would seem to me, and people often ask, they know I'm running for Board of Supervisors in Albemarle, and they often ask, what party do you most align with? And my response to that is, I align with the party of common sense. And it would seem to me, from a common sense standpoint, that interim chief, Durrett, would be a very common sense choice to lead the department. Someone who's grown up as a man in the department.
Yeah.
From my standpoint, as someone who is very pro-blue, getting that top spot filled permanently is critical to righting the ship, morale, filling vacancies, being Longo was such a good face for the department. Like I talk about like the face of the franchise often, and not with police, but just in general, the face of the brand. Derek Jeter was like Mr. New York Yankee, right? It has lacked that face for some time. And when it did have that face, and this is me saying it, it's not you, okay? When it did have that face with Chief Brackney, that brand was oftentimes embroiled with negative connotations and some controversy. That's me, not you, saying that, okay? It's lacking that Jeter of the Yankees, that Longo of the police department when you were there. Can you put in perspective that importance for face interacting with the community as that historical or that institutional memory that comes with that position, and what it may not have right now with an interim leading the department?
So I very much agree on Tito Durrett as a. I mean, he's. Sorry, Tito. I'm not even going to guess as to how many years he's been with the department, but it's.
I think it's 30
I
plus.
think it's in. He's well in his third decade, or into his fourth decade, and there's no substitute for that kind of experience and the community relationships that he's built in that time. I think he's doing a tremendous job of stabilizing the department, stopping the bleed of officers leaving. I've talked to several officers on the ground who have said, they had plans to leave, but they've put that on hold. Right? They don't want to leave. This is where they built their careers. They've got roots in the area, and now that Durrett is kind of stabilizing things, they've put those plans on hold. Chief Longo, looking back there, talking about sort of the face of the organization. I do think, again, on the community trust, the social capital standpoint, he went out and spoke the truth, even if sometimes the officers weren't a huge fan of exactly when he said it or exactly what he said. It was honest, and it was and it wasn't. There was never a blame game. There was no, it was a.
It was a straight shooter.
Yeah, and I think the officers, you never, like, in an organization of 120-ish people, you're never going to have everybody agree on absolutely everything.
Of course.
But I think he was very well respected in that by everyone for the like you said, being a straight shooter, and that's critical. I'd love to see that in whoever comes on.
How do you think, you grew up in Charlottesville,
Mm-hmm.
How do you think August 12, 2017 impacted social capital within the community and the department? I mean, I've been here I went to UVA, been here in Charlottesville 22 years. Much to my wife's disappointment, one of the few times I've lied to my wife was A12 2017 when she begged me not to go.
Yep.
And I said I'm going to go to ACAC instead. and I knew at that moment, Alex, that this was going to be a day and time that would forever live in infamy in Charlottesville history. But it's something I had to see, because I realized even in that moment that our son, who's 4, once he gets to an appropriate age, whether through school or his parents, he would learn about August 12, 2017. And I wanted to offer firsthand perspective on that, as Dad was there on Market Street. Yeah. Your thoughts on A12 and how maybe A12 has influenced the social capital in the community with the department?
Yeah. Social capital absolutely evaporated on that day. I think whether rightly or wrongly, right? And there were a ton of people, a ton of perspectives shared from ground level in the aftermath, and live streamed a tremendous amount, live streamed from the ground. I have personally never seen so much hate in the community so tightly concentrated as the crowds that were out on that day. And there were plenty of people who had every good intention of bringing calmness and peace to the day. Man, that pot boiled over, didn't it? And unfortunately, Tim Heafy wrote an extensive report on looking back, and it is always easy to armchair quarterback. I'd left the department 2 years prior. I was no part of planning or investigating the aftermath. But I think the tragedy, the first tragedy is the lives lost and the people injured. From the lasting department perspective, the fallout to come from that, what I find tragic is how many people seem to blame the individual officers and how that continues to impact interactions even today. You need officers who fall in line behind their commanders. We don't want rogue officers going out there doing everything every day. Looks good in movies, not good on the street. So you want officers who follow commands, and they were following commands. And still, the individual officers there have come under fire daily since then, and that impacts absolutely everything from the way they're presented at city council meetings to interactions during a traffic stop or stopping on the side of the road to help a broken down motorist who might be less trustful of the police now because they've been roasted so severely in public discourse over the last 5 years.
Good answer. It's the collateral damage of 8/12 and also the collateral damage associated with George Floyd's murder has resonated negatively with the brand that is police.
Yep.
How do we recuperate or recover the trust that was lost with such notable circumstances that I think will live in infamy, one locally and one at a more macro scale?
Yeah. So August 12th was definitely a local event. George Floyd, that was not our police department. Very understandable that people would be concerned that a similar thing could happen here. So let's ask the questions. That's good. We like dialogue. And all the countless, too many to list here, countless examples that have, led to unrest in cities across the country, including Charlottesville in protests of solidarity. What I think, what hurts me and hurts the officers, the department, the community relationship is directing that anger at our local officers and our local department when this is something that happened thousands of miles away in a different department with different policies, different hiring practices, different training, right? And it blocks the ability to have the conversation here, right? It's hard to talk. Trying to remember who it was said that if your fists are raised in the air, it's hard to put them together to do good work, right? And so you can't reach across the table and improve things if we're all just yelling at each other. Lots of valid concerns raised. Again, important to have that dialogue. I'd love to see community events. I'd love to see sort of a meet your neighborhood beat cop kind of thing. The foundation is all about sponsoring those sorts of things. Unfortunately, staffing's so low that we can't get any spare officers to get out and make those relationships. I think you mentioned the dehumanizing aspect of the dialogue today, right? It's the police. It's not my neighbor, the police officer. It's not on an individual level. So we're definitely missing that relationship. Our officers are really doing their best, and I'm so impressed by those, especially all of our officers, but especially those who've stuck around for the last 5 years.
Me too.
And so grateful for those that have kept their experience in the department, kept the community relationships that they've built, and that's irreplaceable.
I concur. I mean, I was talking about this with my wife. I mean, let's talk locally. You take a profession that is underpaid, and then you take a profession that's underpaid, and you're asking officers to commute to work. and do a profession that has really difficult hours, holiday and weekend work, a profession where their life is on the line to the point where they have to carry a gun and a bulletproof vest, and their significant others or their family are not certain whether they'll come back alive or completely intact or healthy.
Yep.
And then you compound matters with many in the community having a sour taste for them. And it's no surprise that we have emptiness from a vacancy rate, a high vacancy rate within the department. It is a difficult problem to solve.
Yep.
And now you got a large group, certainly a group led by the socialist contingent locally, that are trying to defund the department.
Yep.
I feel like it's like what's the saying or the proverb or the old saying? It's like death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you make of that? Do you understand that? I mean, I know you do. Like, understand's not the right way, but what do you make of it? And like, what are your thoughts on this defund movement?
Yeah. So I think the heart of the defund movement is asking, where should we be spending our public dollars? How do we best serve the community? And the answer that they're putting out is not policing. That we should be, if we spend that money on housing, if we spend it on economic opportunity, that there'll be less need for police, and so those dollars would better be diverted elsewhere. I think that may be true. I'm not an economist, and I would love to see more investment in those areas, but you don't cut the police first, right? We are already asking our police officers to do a tremendous amount of work today, and they are already short-staffed. We already talked a little bit about the costs of that short staffing, right? The inability or the great difficulty in building community relationships. Simple things like when I was a district officer, I patrolled my streets so regularly that I knew what cars were normally out in front of various houses. I knew how late each business was open. I knew all the bouncers on the downtown mall when I walked the mall. If you just have a rotating door of officers in those positions, they just don't have those community relationships. And on funding the department, at some recent city council meetings in March, some folks stood up during the public comment section to say we have too many officers per capita and we're spending too much money per capita on the police department. And per capita, that's true. We are an outlier. And I shared a letter with City Council that shows that in a neat, pretty graph. But if you look at the job we're actually asking the officers to do, we are at best middling compared to similar departments in cities, and in our current state, grossly understaffed for the job that we're asking them to do. And you see that when you compare the total number of crimes reported per officer in the department. You see it when you compare crime rates per capita. We have, it was compared at a city council meeting that we spend significantly more. We have larger department per capita than some cities like Roanoke, Lynchburg, Waynesboro, Harrisonburg, Albemarle County. So Roanoke and Lynchburg are significantly larger cities. Albemarle is more than twice the size in population of Charlottesville as well. Harrisonburg and Blacksburg are about comparable in size. We have a violent crime rate, according to 2020 FBI statistics, that's nearly twice that of Harrisonburg. Our violent crime rate is nearly 4 times of that of Albemarle County with a similar size. Actually, Albemarle County has more officers, and our crime rate is 4 times. Violent crime is 4 times as high. And we have a violent crime rate nearly 7 times that of Blacksburg. So the job that we're asking our officers to do is that much bigger. And I've used the example before, right? If two cities of a comparable size, one had more house fires than the other, you'd expect the one city to have a larger fire department. You'd expect them to have more trucks to be able to respond to that need, right, to the job at hand.
So the KPI, the key performance indicator we should be focused on, is not necessarily police officers per population. It's police officers per crime rate.
That's right, or per actual crime reported, per call for service. I just looked up this statistic, and I'm pulling it from my head. I believe also in 2020, which I'm using because it's the last year that I could find statistics from everybody on everything, Charlottesville responded to 36,000 calls for service, and Albemarle County had about the same, but did that with more officers. Right, so it's the workload, and it would be the same. You'd ask the same questions if you have a larger school. If you have more students, you need more teachers. If you have more customers coming into your coffee shop, you need more baristas. Right? It's how many. Right. It's how many employees do you have per unit of the job that you're asking them to do, not in the population. If the two populations of equal size, the comparison doesn't matter unless those populations behave exactly the same way.
Comments coming in pretty fast here. I'll see if I can cherry pick a few of these. What are your, this is from two viewers that I respect on the show, and I'll paraphrase for them. What do you make of the criminal justice reform mentality that that Mr. Jim Hingley and Mr. Joe Plantania have?
So I'm very close to that, actually. I'm married to a prosecutor in Joe Plantania's office, so I know a lot about it, and frankly, I think it's great, right? There's a great example of people who were elected by the residents in their respective jurisdictions to fulfill, the agendas that they want, and actually is yet another great example of how the national dialogue and sort of hatred towards the criminal justice system needn't be brought here in full force, right? We already have some of the lowest incarceration rates for nonviolent offenses and low-level drug crimes. We don't hold people on cash bail. That's not done in this area. You're either at risk to the community or you're not, and we're not going to hold you based on your ability to pay. That I think is a good, effective way of addressing what the community wants. Also, a shout out to the mental health docket that both Commonwealth's attorneys' offices have started, right? Recognizing that a lot of people unfortunately end up in the criminal justice system because there's no other service for them. And so there's a special judicial docket to help divert those people into actually getting the help that they need and staying out of the jails and out of the prisons. So some fantastic initiatives,
Does the police department feel supported by City Council?
Lately, no, or I should say, up until recently, for certain, no.
And is that because of the budget? The precarious nature of the current budget?
The precarious nature of the budget certainly plays in. Most pointedly was just the attacks, the outright verbal attacks on our police officers by counselors sitting behind the bench in council meetings.
Current or former?
Former.
Okay. So this is you. This is me saying this, not you. And I've been very straightforward with. I'll cut to the chase. I've been very straightforward on the show with what I've thought has been damaging leadership by our former mayor, and Nakia Walker. I've been very straightforward on this show that the mayor of Charlottesville should be a champion of the city in totality and not an activist on the dais.
Yeah.
And she was an activist and a lightning rod and not a galvanizer of the community. And I understand championing and standing up for underserved population, but when you're the mayor, you can't champion the underserved population at the damning nature of the rest of the population.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. So
a rising tide lifts all boats, right? We want to better the
well
city.
said.
We want to better the city. We want, we need. It's a balancing act. You need to recognize your flaws, but not focus so single-mindedly on them that becomes the only thing that anybody ever talks about, right? And that was, frankly, the issue coming out of City Council, as from the police officer's view, was, just attacks on their character, on the work that they were doing, and I try to catch up or keep up with the officers that I used to work with, and heard from them that they can deal with the community facing dialogue or lack thereof. They can handle it when they get out of their cars in a neighborhood and they get yelled at and cursed at by some people standing on the street. They can handle that. They've been doing that for years. What hurts more than anything else is when city leadership at all levels are damning the work that they're doing and calling their character into question and their reasons for service. So, that's I think that's a great point. We need a good, it's that same coming together, right? We need to cross the table. Need to be able to talk about all these issues, right? And I always said, even in court, I never took offense at somebody to come plead not guilty and argue that I was wrong in making an arrest. That's a fundamental right in this country, and it's a beautiful one. Never took offense at that. We need, just like in that scenario, we need to be able to talk. We need to be able to have these conversations. So would love to see, and I'm very happy so far that the current city council seems actually willing to listen to what everybody has to say, and I'm grateful for that.
From the same vein, is that what led to the demise or downfall of Chief Brackney within the department?
Sorry, could you ask that one?
Well, I think Chief Brackney, and you know more about this than I do, but from someone who follows it closely, her leadership or her mindset with policing was very much focused on reform, so much so that it seemed to polarize or alienate many in the department. And once the top person in the department loses morale or faith or confidence of the department he or she is leading, then you have a conundrum.
Yep.
And we saw an obvious conundrum that led to many in the department not feeling motivated or compelled to follow the chief.
Yep.
And now we have a chief that is in an active lawsuit against her former employer.
Yep.
I guess for me, I wonder, as someone who loves this community dearly, so much so that he named the business I Love Seville, I wonder that, how much influence did the mayor have over Chief Brackney? And I also wonder, with Chief Brackney, was her approach to policing just not a great fit for this community?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on any of that?
So, great questions. I think one piece of evidence that I find interesting, or just a flag, is that a lot of the counselors and our former city manager, one of 5 or 6 that we've had in the last 5 years also.
quit.
are not, well, they're not able to talk about anything. You know, they've made what statements they're going to make, what statements they're able to make around Chief Brackney's termination, which is typically indicative that it's an HR, there's an HR process, there's an HR complaint, right? All of which is confidential or subject to certain release policies and everything, right? So they're not actually able to talk about the real why, right? And I think I'd answer the rest of the question just by saying I personally believe in service leadership. All right, if you are the head of an organization, it's your job. You know, if you're and it can be if you're the shift sergeant with 10 officers on patrol that night. It can be, well, you're lucky for that now. 6 officers overnight, or 10 during the day, or an evening shift, and it's your job to enable those officers to be able to go do their best work, and it's the officer's duty to serve the community in the way that they best can. The chief sits at the absolute top of that, should be enabling their support staff to help the department, should be enabling the investigations bureau to go out and do, close cases, right? They should be enabling patrol to go out and help make the city safe. And I think the departure of so many officers, the absolutely crushing morale in the department at the time, all of these things are great evidence that just wasn't happening. And that is a tragedy, right? We've lost actually, I believe it was October 4 of 2021, in response to some questioning on letting Chief Brackney go. Then city manager told city council.
Is this Mr. Chip Boyles? Mr.
Chip Boyles told city council, and I'm sorry, I can't find the exact number, but on the order of, so they started with 117 officers in 2019 or thereabouts, and over 90 officers had left the department in the previous 3 years of 2018 to 2021. 90 officers had left, and 70 some had been hired. That is mind-blowing, right? That doesn't mean that we only have 20 officers left. That doesn't mean that only 20 officers have more than 3 years experience, right? Because some of those people came and then immediately left. But that turnover seriously hurts the level of experience that we have, hurts the community relationships, hurts our ability to, actually handle really tricky situations that you need that intuition that you build up from years on the streets, and hurts the next generation too, right? Who do you have training new officers coming in if all of your experience is left? So I think certainly a damaging period for the department. The last 5 years, really, right? They've suffered the community backlash, and I think the chiefs that have come and gone have been a result of that. The community, what the community and what city council wants for whatever reasons they want it, and we're paying the consequences for that today.
Good interview, and I appreciate your straightforwardness. I look at the city, and a city that I love dearly, that I'm proud to raise, to work in. Our families here constantly. I see not only attrition and vacancies in the police department, but all over City Hall. Mm-hmm. And I think the vacancies that we have all over City Hall and the police department, unfortunately, and being straight shooter here, is a lot of the collateral damage of former Mayor Nikiah Walker. We have city managers who are hired, Mark Woolley, who quits a few days before he takes the job. Interim city managers and Chip Boyles, who I know and respect, sprinting for the exit. Yep. John Blair, who's watching the program now, love John Blair. He knows I love him. Watching now is now the city attorney in Stanton.
Yep.
Going from city attorney of Charlottesville to city attorney of Stanton. That, I think, makes a statement.
Yep.
And we just got a lot of rebuilding we got to do. How does this happen? This city council, if they don't hire, and right now they're so deeply embroiled with the budget, the city manager hire is not even a focus point.
Yep.
The Robert Bob Group, who is the consultant city manager, just essentially a mercenary city manager, their contract expires in June.
Yeah.
So they're like, I mean, it's April.
Yep.
I mean, we're not going to get a new city manager between now and June. So they're likely going to get renewed for another 6 months, which takes us to the end of the year. The next thing I've contemplated on this program is the new city manager. Do we have to wait till the new city council is elected in 2023 November? Because you risk a lame duck city manager being hired before that. 3 positions are up for grabs: Payne, McGill, and Snook in November 2023. The longer we wait to hire the city manager, the more that person, he or she we hire, could be seen as a lame duck hire. And the longer we wait to hire a city manager, the more the police chief in the city, in the CPD, is going to be interim status, and we love Chief Durrett. But I can't imagine that the Charlottesville Police Department police chief is going to be hired before the city manager is hired.
No.
And I can't imagine the Robert Bob Group mercenary city manager is going to hire the police chief.
No, and
You think about this stuff?
Yeah. So what I understand about the situation is very much that they want to get a new city manager in because it's the city manager's duty to appoint the department chiefs.
Right.
And that includes the chief of police. So there is an order of operations that they want to see happen. I have to say, despite his mercenary nature, I've been.
He's a great guy.
I've only met him once, but was very impressed, and I hear good things coming from other city staff, and tremendously impressed and grateful that the 2 deputy city managers have stuck around. They are
Ashley and
A+
Sam.
people. Yeah, really impressive, and the city is lucky to have them. I think I mentioned a lot of officers who had one foot out the door have sort of, they're holding the door open, but they're not walking out right now because they're waiting to see sort of what the next move is, right? What kind of climate are we going to bring in here? And to your question about how do we move forward, then it is,
it's almost a department in purgatory right now.
It is, and so look, citywide on all these issues, it's a call to action from everybody in Charlottesville, all the stakeholders in the community, speaking up about it. Right, the last 5 years, I wouldn't have. I can think of a bunch of people who would have been great city councilors, but I would not have wished being a city councilor on my worst enemy, with the hate and the vitriol that was spewed at the whole panel, and sometimes reflected back, but woe to you who expresses a contrary opinion in a city council meeting either, or at least historically over the last few years. So that has meant that a lot of people, it's my belief, when I talk to my friends and neighbors, they are concerned about the state of police staffing. They are concerned about making sure that we have enough people to provide good coverage to keep the city safe, and but they're not. That message isn't reaching city council, and so I would say if you're listening to this, if you're concerned about those issues, if you're concerned about the number, quality, how well trained, what kind of police department we have, then city council needs to hear it. They are actively working on their budget. I think there's one meeting today, another meeting on Thursday, and it should be adopted. I think I heard on the 14th or thereabouts. So we are racing to the end here, and this is just 1 year, right? It's going to start all over again next year, budget-wise, and so I'd encourage anybody who, all the people who I'm on Nextdoor. I love I can sit there eating popcorn, reading all the posts, but it's all the people all the people who complain about speeders in your neighborhoods, about all the gunshots that have been popping off around the city, the violent crime rate, all your catalytic converters being stolen. Just run down the list of complaints that people submit on Nextdoor. Those complaints need to go to City Council so that Council knows that you don't feel safe in the city, and that the department needs to be adequately staffed to have enough people, right? If you want to catch somebody stealing catalytic converters, you need plainclothes cars out on the street, unmarked cars and plainclothes officers to try to catch somebody in the act. It's pretty difficult, but it can be done with the right staffing and the right operational plan. Things like that. If you want speed enforcement on your local streets, if you feel like people are coming in too hot, you need officers. You need enough officers to go around to do that. So if you feel that way about the neighborhoods that you live in, now's the time to speak up. Not tomorrow, not next week. It's got to be now.
John Kelly giving you some props right now. John Kelly, we love you, man. He says, and I concur. Excuse me, guys. It's pollen and allergy season, and the first to succumb to pollen and allergy season is yours truly. John Kelly says, great interview. Alex is an amazing advocate for the Charlottesville Police Foundation, but also an example of kind, thoughtful leadership the city desperately needs. Danny O'Day said, well said, and great points, Alex. You had 3 media outlets locally watching you here. I thank you. You are straightforward, and these were not easy questions, and you answered them well. And for those that are tuning in, I want to emphasize this again. He spent 5 years within the Charlottesville Police Department as an officer. Was the downtown mall your beat?
I worked the downtown mall, so I was a midnight shift patrol officer for all 5 years. 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. Wouldn't have had it any other way.
You've seen some crazy stuff.
It's been interesting at times. The dead of winter on a rainy Tuesday night is pretty slow, and then a Friday in the summer when the bars are closing is pretty busy. And which another point, right? Your police department shouldn't be staffed for the good days. It should be staffed and trained for the bad days, right? So, yeah, I did the downtown mall from early when I started to about 2012, 13, and sort of floated around after. So the midnight shift would have somebody actually walking the mall from about 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. and then I'd hit the city in a car. My last couple of years, I was in the university area, what we call District 6. So not including the university grounds, which are technically the county, but the corner, all those fraternities that are on, Rugby or a good number of the ones that are on Rugby and Madison Lane next to Mad Bowl there, as well as a lot of the other neighborhoods sort of down in off of Rugby Road there and Fontaine and everything. Also was a police bicycle instructor. I used to tell people I was a bike cop, and they'd get really excited and ask me about Harley Davidsons. It was far less dramatic than that, but led our mountain biking, bicycle training. So the officers that you saw on the mall did that. I was a forensics officer called to help others collect crime scene evidence, and was a field training officer as well for the last couple of years. So helped teach sort of some of the next generation that were coming through.
So he knows firsthand the nitty-gritty, guys. Why don't we close with some final thoughts or final words for you? I would, you go anywhere you want. I hope, again, we can emphasize how important this time is with budget time and budget season.
Yep.
And limited dollars for allocation.
Yep. So we do all love Seville. We're all here. I honestly can't think of another place. I don't know what my plan B would be. If Charlottesville burned to the ground tomorrow, I don't know where I would go. Love this place, and This is a fantastic city. We deserve the best. We deserve, and all of our citizens deserve the best out of our schools, out of our, out of our healthcare, out of our fire department. Not leaving you guys out, and out of the police department. And just like, it's the national dialogue going on right now about, pay. And worker compensation nationally, right? People are saying, hey, minimum wage is not enough, it needs to go up. Well, our officers also need to be paid more. They're making more than minimum wage, but that's part of the conversation too, especially for the job that we're asking them to do. And if Charlottesville wants to be a standout community and provide the service that our citizens do really deserve, we need the best officers. We need to hire the best possible people. We need to get them to stick around long enough to use their experience and develop relationships in the community. For that, we need competitive pay, and we need to provide them with the best possible training and the equipment that they need to get their job done. And there's no other way. That all that costs money. But if you want your world-class city to have a world-class police department, that's what it's going to take.
Great. I appreciate you. Seriously, the interview was fantastic. His name is Alex Bruner, guys, from the Charlottesville Police Foundation, a board of director there, and a lifelong Charlottesvillian, husband, father, and in the private sector. He spent an hour with us highlighting some of the things that I think need to be highlighted and spotlighted. I'm very, 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 very grateful for your time today.
Thank you. And if anybody wants to know more, of course, the Charlottesville Police Foundation, you can just Google search that, or I believe it's CvillePoliceFoundation.org, probably. And we have contact information there.
It is, CharlottesvillePoliceFoundation.org.
There we go.
Yeah.
And it's funny how infrequently you visit your own websites. So we're always happy to take questions about, what we do, how to get involved, how to support the police department. And of course, if you'd like to donate to help the police department, or if you want to learn more about our initiatives to help officers, then we're very happy to talk.
And I am happy to help. Seriously.
Excellent.
Thank you so much, Alex. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Judah, if we can go to the one shot here with me. Alex, you have a good afternoon. Alex Bruner, folks, the Charlottesville Police Foundation. For those that are wondering, we archived the show in totality on ilovecville.com, and I think it's one that's certainly worth watching. He was absolutely fantastic today. I have a couple more news and notes that I'd like to get out of my notebook before wrapping up today's show. First, you'll see this on ilovecville.com later today. I have confirmed that Blue Ridge Country Store has now been officially sold, and the new owners will take over Blue Ridge Country Store on May 1st. So that is some news. It's a business and brand that's iconic on the downtown mall. 25 plus years, the Blue Ridge Country Store has been in operation with a husband and wife team that were working just about every single shift. Dan and Patty have sold the store. It was listed on March 7th by Stu Rifkin, friend of the program, for $195,000. So a business now under contract with the new owner taking over May 1. Blue Ridge Country Store has been sold, and Dan and Patty Privis get some retirement after working hard for 25 plus years on the downtown mall, and just a fantastic locally owned business. A couple of other items from the notebook today. We will continue to highlight the sales and transactions and the businesses that we very much enjoy patronizing and championing on the I Love Cville network, as we help owners and sellers and founders and partners and CEOs and our friends and neighbors get to the finish line with selling their businesses, and they're earning some money on the sweat equity that they've put into running these businesses for so long. Rockfish Brewing Company, two other updates for you. Rockfish Brewing Company, do you have that photo, if you could, put on screen? It's on screen now. Guys, take a look at the screen now, please, for those that are watching the visual component. Rockfish Brewing Company on the downtown mall is very close to opening. Front of the program, Peter McMines. We will reach out to him. He's the brewer and owner of Rockfish Brewing Company. He'll join us soon. He's opening up a second location on the downtown mall. This location is going to be even bigger than his pilot brewery next, is it Fifth Seasons on Preston Avenue, the gardening company. So his second location will be on the downtown mall in the old Downtown Grill building, a building that Wilson Ritchie purchased. Front of the program, Wilson Ritchie. Wilson Ritchie took the Bebedero from an upstairs location and moved it to ground level. And he took the Downtown Grill, former steakhouse, and split it into two. And Rockfish Brewing Company will share that space with the Bebedero next door. You saw what the bar looks like. I think it's going to be absolutely dynamite. And Peter's going to join us on this program, guys, this month to highlight his new location, Rockfish Brewing Company. One other item I'd like to get out of the notebook. In front of the program, John Blair, city attorney in Stanton. John, I've been following Stanton closer and closer since you were down there, my friend. I saw in Instagram, do you have that video for Instagram? I'll give you a countdown for that if you could, Judah, here shortly. Stanton downtown is doing things all the right way. And I'm going to show you a video from Stanton and its leadership on what they are doing for downtown Stanton with what we call parklets. And it's taking the parking spaces on the side streets in and around downtown Stanton and turning them into venues for dining al fresco in Stanton. Basically expanding seating for restaurants and small businesses and creating a more sense of community in downtown Stanton. I've very much encouraged, in fact, I've implored respectfully that City Council in Charlottesville start realizing that they're being out-innovated and out-policied by jurisdictions around them. Danville, Virginia, this month is about to create a designated outdoor refreshment area with its downtown where citizens and tourists and students alike will be able to walk all over in downtown Danville with beers and wines and cocktails from restaurant to restaurant, with the concept of a greater sense of community and a concept of incremental revenue for Danville. Stanton, Virginia is doing some amazing things as well with its downtown. This was sent to me by leadership there. If you could, my friend, cue up that video, and folks that are watching, look at the screen here, look at the screen in 3, in 2, and in 1. So big time things happening there in Stanton. I think just an absolutely lovely, lovely town. So that's the show. I hope you enjoyed the Monday edition of the program, where we are unafraid to have real conversation about the community we love very dearly. So unafraid that the conversation we have may even ring strongly against popular opinion. But when it's all said and done, a community is as strong as the morale of its frontline workers. And if we have a vacancy rate of 24% within the police force that serves the community, and we currently do in Charlottesville, and if we have jurisdictional competition with the surrounding counties and on the other side of the mountain, where jurisdictions are offering better pay, no commutes, and less headaches from a social capital standpoint, then we will continue to lose Charlottesville police officers to competing jurisdictions. And if that trend, a disturbing one, continues, this community will not be the world-class community we all champion and endeavor to be. So like I ask kindly for our viewers and listeners, when you hear people say, let's continue to raise taxes and gentrify people out of the community, I ask you to say to folks that ask for tax increases, stop, enough already. You're only creating gentrification. I'd like for that similar mindset to continue with the police force. When you hear folks say, we have too many officers, we're paying them too much, let's defund the budget with the police department, I need and ask you respectfully to say, stop, enough already. There's a vacancy rate of 24%. The funding is not the solution here. That's the program, the Monday edition of the I Love CVille show. My name is Jerry Miller. Take care.